Well, I'm getting closer to the end of this review series, and as happens as I start to get closer and closer to the end, it's a lot of videos to record in a short amount of time. I start smelling the finish line. I most certainly am with the Survivor Series review series. There's no question about it. All right, so, anyways, I'll try to get through these last 7 or 8 and try to make them as good as I possibly can and stay away from that review fatigue that can happen sometimes and creep in with these other series. Now, Survivor Series 2005. I have to confess that this is not a particularly interesting time in the WWE for me. In fact, from 2005, like the mid to late portion, until probably the early portion of 2007, mid portion of 2007, while I watched and kept touch, I really wasn't that interested in the product. I just had moved on, doing other things. Like I said, I still watched. I just didn't care very much. It was kind of like, again, almost somewhat like now, watching out of habit as much as anything else. The storylines weren't all that great. The characters to me weren't all that great, even though looking back, the period of time here is sure as hell a lot better than what it is now. But they were starting to get some things that were creeping in that were starting to bother me a little bit. And I was starting to see maybe where this company was heading long term. And I was really starting to say to myself, ugh. That's kind of what I think of when I think about the year 2005 and Survivor Series 2005. Now, the good thing about this show is if you like in-ring action, in good in-ring action at that, you had a few matches on here that really, you know, delivered the goods. You look at the opener, Booker T versus Benoit, best of 7 match for the United States title. I thought this was a really good match, a really good way to kick off the series. I wish occasionally they would do this to give some relevance to those mid-card titles still, especially considering they don't seem to want to book much in the way of storylines around these mid-card titles. This is a way, if you're going to give away random title matches on TV, this is a way to actually do those matches while still having a story about them. Best of 3, best of 5, best of 7 series. I like these, and I think the WWE would occasionally benefit from doing them. Like I said, especially again when you consider how they treat their mid card titles today. So this match between Booker T and Sharmell was a good novel start to a good novel series. You've got Trish and Melina for the women's championship. It's probably about the best you could expect Trish to have with Melina. That's kind of what it is. And this, in a way, too, was just kind of killing time and filling time until you got to Mickey and Trish at WrestleMania 22 and the awesomeness that was that. The outstanding match on this card, though, is not Theodore Long versus Eric Bischoff. Those are the type of matches that sometimes you just look at and you say, Vince, why would you even bother doing this? What would make you think in any way, shape, or form there was any type of real tangible payoff to this where anybody would want to actually give a fuck about watching this? Just why? Why would I need to see Theodore Long versus Eric Bischoff? And I know this was to write Eric off of TV, he was leaving the company, what have you. But again, did we need to see Theodore Long versus Eric Bischoff? This is bad. Like, totally brutal bad. I could go in a lot more on this match. However, when a card has in the middle of the show a Triple H versus Ric Flair last man standing match, it is really hard to focus on the negative too much. This match is outstanding. This match kicks ass in so many ways. One of my 10 favorite Survivor Series matches of all time, and I feel very confident in saying that. Clearly, the match of the night. More so than Benoit Booker T for the U.S. title, more so than the WWE Championship match, more so than the main event 5-on-5 Survivor Series tag match. Triple H, Ric Flair, easily the match of the night. There's so much story there. You look at the two performers involved and the style of match, you would have to think, unless there's some type of nightmarish scenario, that this match is going to be, to borrow a phrase from the hip cool kids nowadays, off the chain, off the hook, or if you really down like that, not like DL down, but down like that, you say it was off the heezy for sheezy. And it was. It was all of those things and so much more. Triple H and Ric Flair, Last Man Standing, Survivor Series 2005 is awesome. If you don't like anything else that was on this show, you'd be hard pressed to convince me that you couldn't enjoy Triple H versus Ric Flair last man standing match. You look at the performers involved, the style of match, and again, the history and story between these two characters, both in real life and on screen. You have the recipe for a classic. My one disappointment with this is because of those factors that I just previously stated. I'll never understand why this was in the middle of the card and not closing out the show. Because you'd have to know after Triple H and Ric Flair that frankly nothing else is going to be able to follow it. So why would you sit there and even bother? And I think that in part hurt the John Cena Kurt Angle WWE Championship match. Maybe it was also the fact too that people were already, I think, slowly starting to wear thin of Cena's act. They were starting to understand where things were going and they weren't particularly liking it. It's not to say that this match was bad. But the funny thing is, when it comes to Cena and Angle and the different matches they had over the years, my favorite match between the two of them will always be Cena's debut match on SmackDown back in 2002. And that was only a couple of minutes. But that just works so well. And, this match, it just didn't work so well. You've got Daivari as a special guest referee. It just, Super Cena shit begins. I mean, it's, of all the people to not beat him for the title, you could have at least had Kurt Angle do it once, because it's not like it would have hurt Cena. People would have believed, you would have thought that a Kurt Angle, a legit badass dude, would have been able to beat Cena. Well, like I said, these are the type of things that started to educate you on what was really going to go down in the future of the WWE. And then we get to the main event. And it's SmackDown versus Raw. And this is fine. It was a very good match, actually. And I like when they did the brand extension and they would have the competition between the brands. I thought this was a cool thing where you would keep the shows separate, but at a show like Survivor Series, you could do a Raw versus SmackDown match and it works very well. You can put a lot of people into it, and again, it works very, very well. What I didn't like about this in particular is just the fact that it was basically another kind of like Randy Orton showcase piece. And I understand where they were going and what they were trying to set up to and all of that. And that was all fine and good. And it kind of ultimately worked. But Batista was one of your top guys, one of your future hands. And yet you eliminated him so early in the match with Kane and Big Show taking him out. Just so that way you could focus on Orton. And like I said again, based off of the way this was booked, based off of the way the match finished and where they were going after this, I understand why they did this. But that always bothered me a little bit. It's like, you've got Shawn Michaels in there. He's eliminating multiple people, but Batista's getting taken out in no time whatsoever. And it's just like, why? Why the fuck are you doing that? But in general, it was a solid match, solid ending that I liked at least. And Survivor Series 2005, frankly, isn't that bad of a show. You've got, 6 matches on the card. I think 3 of them delivered pretty well. 2 of them were so-so. And one of them that was really bad. But again, one of them can be really bad if the feature marquee matches deliver. And that's what Survivor Series 2005 did. For a period of time in the WWE that I didn't particularly care about that much, that I wasn't that much in tune to, I can at least say I don't have a lot of problem going back and watching this show.